She's the 57th governor of the state of New York and is determined to win re-election. First up, subway safety. I wonder, why did you make this such an important part of your State of the State speech?
Well, I'm fighting for New York families. It includes making sure that everyone feels safe and secure, whether they're someone living in a small town upstate or those who are using our subway system. And there has been a spike in high-profile crimes. I mean, the statistics are still in a good place, but the statistics don't matter. It's how you feel about taking that ride to your job or the doctor's appointment. So I knew that we could help the city of New York with more resources to help them beef up the patrols. So there's police officers on every train on the overnight, and also making sure that we have people in stations. Cameras are making a huge difference, as well as the barriers that we're going to put up. So when you're standing there waiting for your train, you don't have to worry about someone accidentally shoving you in, or you falling in on your own, or being shoved. So there's just a lot we can do to help restore the sense of calm, and to also go after the evaders who are not paying their fares, because it creates this sense of lawlessness underground, and people deserve better than that.
So was there any one instance that made you say, I've got to deal with subways? Was it the woman who was set on fire? Was it a stabbing? Was it somebody being pushed? What was the thing that said, I've got to do this?
Now, well over a year ago, we launched our Cops, Cameras, and Care initiative to get more police officers, the 1,250 National Guard I have down there now. And I would say not one thing has made a difference, but I did know that when we help with overtime for NYPD and some of our other initiatives, the crime rate did drop dramatically. 1 year ago, January, we had a 46% increase in crimes. People were very anxious. I mean, fear is paralyzing. And we stepped in with our plan, and the numbers dropped incredibly by March. So I know this is the strategy. We'll continue it. So it wasn't one event, but I know what those events do to people's sense of security, and we have to make sure we're doing everything in our power to give them that safe, secure commute that they deserve.
So you've earmarked $77 million from this budget, and it's going to start Monday to put extra cops at night. So what happens at the end of 6 months when that money runs out?
Well, I will always be assessing the situation, but traditionally, when the summer months come and there's fewer people in the subways who are using this as a homeless shelter, and I said our subways cannot be a rolling homeless shelter. We have to stop that. We have to get more supportive housing and medical care, even for those who do not want to have it themselves. If they can't take care of themselves for their medical needs, their food needs, their housing needs, then we have to step in and give them the compassionate care they need, but also to say, this cannot be where you live. It is creating a sense of anxiety for other riders. So I'll assess the numbers in 6 months, but usually in the summertime, the subway numbers improve rather significantly because more people are outdoors when the weather is nicer.
So if there's a need, would you continue the funding?
Yeah, my job is to keep people safe. Obviously, primary responsibility for policing the subway system is NYPD, but I've always wanted to have a different approach to the mayor and his administration than we saw in the past, one of collaboration. One says that I don't just represent the state, I also represent every resident of New York City, and I take that seriously. So I'll always be the partner that the city needs to ensure their safety and security.
So when you talk about the mentally ill homeless, one of the things that you're supporting is a move to allow people who are mentally ill, who don't want help, to be forcibly sent to a facility where they can get help. Immediately after you announced it, the Coalition for the Homeless, the Legal Aid Society were up in arms saying it wasn't the right thing to do. I wonder if you think that you can get this through the legislature, where there's so many people who sort of skew to the left and might be listening to those groups.
I will say this. There's nothing compassionate about leaving someone who needs medical care on the streets or in a subway. It just doesn't make sense. And I've always been a common sense governor. You look at this and say, that's not right. And yes, I'm willing to take on those tough fights, those fights for your family and your safety. And the legislature has heard me loud and clear. I want to get this done. And the fact is that there's a whole different system of mental health care than there used to be. The idea of involuntary incarceration meant you're being sent to some, horrible place in the 1970s, like a prison. It's so different. I've invested $1 billion to hire more professionals, to have more supportive housing, to have more pathways to long-term care, to let people have their health back again. And it also makes New Yorkers safer.
So let's talk about the $69 billion question at the MTA. The MTA has a $69 billion capital plan and a $33 billion gap. I've talked to people in the legislature. They say the only way to deal with it is a new revenue stream, more taxes or more fees. What's your position on it?
Well, as I said before, I have no intention of raising income taxes on New Yorkers. I mean, I don't want to have another reason why people feel they have to leave the state because taxes are too high. In fact, I'm reducing taxes on the middle class to the lowest rates in 70 years. So I'm very sensitive to what additional costs can do. The legislature, I would say this, it's in their court right now because the leaders vetoed with the power they had to, they vetoed the capital plan that was put forward by the MTA. That's their prerogative. And now they'll go back and put together the plan that they want me to look at. Obviously, we need to get something done. People need to understand that if we don't make the investments, the ones that should have been made all along, it's only going to get worse. The system will deteriorate. People need to have reliability. They need to have the LED lights installed. They need more barriers installed. They need more train tracks. It's a 100-year-old system. It doesn't take care of itself. We have to make these investments. So we have no choice. This is the economic engine for our entire state. And the legislature, I'm sure, understands that we cannot fail in keeping this running in a safe, smooth manner.
So the legislature, the various people I've spoken to, have talked about a whole menu of possibilities: increasing the mobility tax, a millionaire's tax, a mansion tax, taxes on fuel companies. Is there any one of those things that you think would be less onerous for the state that you would support?
Now, I would say at this point, as I'm preparing my own budget and I have to work on how we're funding all the initiatives that are helping out families, and the legislature, in vetoing this, they have the opportunity to structure a plan that we'll look at and see what their plans are. There's obviously a number of sources, but I'm trying really hard to make sure that New York is more affordable for New Yorkers. This is something that we've struggled with. Inflation has been so high. Products today are 19% higher than they were just a few years ago. That's hitting families, especially those with little kids, really hard.
But you're saying that not funding this plan is not an option?
We have to fund a plan. We have to fund a capital plan that looks to the future, invests in projects, not just the order of good repair, but also I want the Interborough Express. I want people in Brooklyn and Queens to be able to have a new connection to the outer boroughs that isn't there now. I want to move along the 2nd Avenue subway to eliminate a transit desert in East Harlem. There's so many things I want to do. I want to look at Penn Station. I mean, my gosh, that should be a beautiful showcase that we're proud of, instead of embarrassed when you shuffle by there and say, oh, this is New York, we've got to do better than this.
So I want to ask you a quick question about congestion pricing, which is getting a lot of opposition in the northern suburbs and in the suburbs in general. In your State of the State speech, you talked about the fact that you want to work to make the commute to Grand Central much faster by 15 minutes. And it's things like a new track at Spuyten Duyvil and other things. Talk to me about that. Is that real world? Can you really make that happen?
I wouldn't say it if I couldn't do it. I mean, I am pragmatic, I am down to earth, and I don't speak, as you heard in my statement, I don't speak in platitudes and lofty language. I put forth a concrete action plan for 2025, so we're starting on this already. And anything we can do to make the commuter experience better, and I've taken the trains. I was just on the Metro North. I had a chance to walk through and talk to many of the passengers. When I mentioned that they could have 130 hours back in their year, it's like, it's a gift, especially for harried parents who are trying to get home for their
so
child's
it's real that you could get 15 minutes?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And make the trip down from Poughkeepsie under 90 minutes.
Are you kidding?
No.
All right, we're going to hold you to that.
Let's get it done.
And we'll be right back with more from Governor Hochul. She doesn't have to face re-election until next year, but already her opponents are lining up. what Kathy Hochul's reaction. But before I talk to you about all these people who want your job, I want to ask you about something you sort of highlighted in your State of the State, and you're going to talk about more in the budget on Tuesday, and that's a cell phone ban. I wonder what it's looking like for you in terms of how it's operating, how it's funded, and what you'll talk to parents about their concern about safety.
And I'm a parent myself, and I know exactly how they feel when their child, the most precious person in their entire life, goes off to school. But what has changed with this generation, where students are no longer learning and paying attention to teachers, they're so absorbed in their cell phone, and it's taken kids to a dark mental health place. I've talked to so many teenagers at roundtables around the state, teenage girls who are being harassed and bullied, and they're missing out on something, and the anxiety and sometimes just the threats they feel. No child should have to endure that when they're supposed to be learning algebra or learning social studies. And the teachers, 74% of teachers say it's a huge distraction. They're not breaking through to our kids, and we have to improve our performance on standardized tests. We just have to do better. We have to do better. So I look at this. It took me a while to get to this place. I was not for a ban initially. But as I looked at other states that have done it, some of the school districts in New York, like Schoharie and Lackawanna is doing it now, and some of the ones in Westchester, they're seeing extraordinary results, that kids are now becoming more outgoing. They're talking to other students, they're interacting, they're learning those interpersonal skills that you want your child to emerge having. Working in creative clusters, talking just during lunch, because right now the lunchroom is silent, because they're not communicating with each other, building friendships. And I know the parents' fear is that if there's something horrible happening on the school grounds, there's a shooting even, something that Columbine happened when my kids were younger, it's a fear that's deep-rooted. But what got me to the place of saying we can let these cell phones go to the end of the day, police officers, sheriffs, law enforcement told me, if there is a shooter in the building, the last thing you want your child to be doing is fumbling for their cell phone, texting their friends, maybe videoing it, contacting you. They need to be laser focused on the adult in the room to lead them to safety. And when I heard that, and if more parents heard that, they would understand that a bell-to-bell ban, morning until the day is over, is not going to hurt your kids. It's going to help them emerge with stronger mental health and resiliency. And that's what these kids need to have. And they've asked us. It's hard to be the first child in your classroom to be saying, I'm not going to have a cell phone. But if it's a ban overall, it's easier for the teachers, the school administrators, if the state takes steps in and does this. So I'm working out the final details, but this is something that the teachers really support strongly. A lot of parent organizations, Common Sense Media supports. A lot of support for this, because if your child misses their school lunch and not sure who's picking them up after school or whatever, you need a cell, you go down the office just like we had to. We did okay.
So it's going to be a bell-to-bell ban, but because it's in the budget, there must be some state money involved. Right. What is the state going to pay for?
We're looking at what school district. Again, obviously, we fund all of our educational institutions at record levels. So when we talk about overall, the increase in school funding that we'll be doing.
But will you fund the pouches?
Well, I don't want to take away the ability of school districts to customize how they want to approach this. I'm just going to say that these are our parameters.
And there's a pot of money?
Let me look at that. We're still working on my budget now, okay? You'll know on Tuesday.
She doesn't want to be pinned down to how much.
Not right now.
Okay, I get that. So moving right along to the people who want to defeat you when you run for re-election. When in your State of the State speech, you said many times this quote, "Your family, our fight." Is this going to be your message as you decide and you do run for re-election next year?
I am running for election, and this is not a new slogan to me. It's how I've lived my life. And as governor, I've been able to draw on my life's experiences of seeing my grandparents who lived in great poverty be able to get a little tiny house where they raised 8 children. My own father working at the steel plant with his father and brothers. My parents lived in a trailer park. I lived in a tiny apartment. I've seen the struggles of others, and that is why I feel so passionate about fighting for New York families. And that's why giving money back to families with the inflation rebate, $500 for families because they paid too much for everything.
But your whole package, you say, is going to mean $5,000 per family for a family of four. That's a huge amount of money.
It is. It is. People have overpaid, and the inflation rebate, for example, we took in $3 billion more in our state coffers in sales tax because everybody paid more for diapers and kids' sneakers and backpacks. I said, that's not our money, it's your money. You never should have had to pay so much. Inflation is a nationwide phenomenon. I encourage other governors to do this. The child tax credit, I've raised kids. The most expensive years are when you're paying for the diapers and the formula. They outgrow their clothes every 3 months. Let's give parents of New York a break. Let them know that there's someone who understands. You know, first mom governor means I've been there. I know how hard it is, especially if you can't find childcare and you have to give up your job and you're down to one income or just trying to support yourself on your own. It's hard. So I will always fight for New York families. And whether it's viewed as an election strategy or not, they're wrong because it's how I've always lived my life.
So one of the things that happened during State of the State was that Mike Lawler, congressman from upstate, came to Albany and had a press conference before you even spoke to attack you. And some of the things he talked about was the fact that New York was #1 in out-migration, people moving out of the state. We have a high crime rate, #1 in business taxes, et cetera, et cetera. What's your reaction to him constantly going after you every single time you do anything?
First of all, my reaction, I ignore it. And this is New York. There's always going to be opponents. We saw what happened to opponents who were members of Congress who ran last time. 2 of them lost their jobs. That's fine. But if you look at the out-migration pattern, guess when it spiked? When they eliminated the state and local tax deduction.
Which the Republicans did.
Which Republicans did under Donald Trump. That's when you could look at the trend lines when so many people left our state because they could no longer deduct their state and local taxes. That cost New Yorkers $12 billion a year since 2018. Mike Lawler, don't spend your time in Albany. Get down to Washington and say, make sure you get this done.
So take your best shot at Mike Lawler.
I'm not playing politics now. I mean, I don't need to. I'm going to run on my record. He's got a lot of explaining to do, and he's supporting Donald Trump. And there's a lot of issues that are going to be hostile to the interests of New Yorkers. Like, if they don't deliver a full repeal of the policy that took away this right we've had since Abraham Lincoln was president, the right to deduct, not be double taxed. That's $12 billion back in New Yorkers' pockets. You start talking about affordability, let them get the money they've been owed all this time. So there's issues, there'll be policy disagreements, but right now, and I'm going to continue, I'm governing the great state of New York.
And you already raised a lot of money. We have about 30 seconds left. You've raised a lot of money for your campaign already.
I'll be fine. It's my 16th election. I know how to do this.
So we're going to have to leave it right there for now. But our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. We're back with New York Governor Kathy Hochul. Governor, I talked to voters who had a few questions for you. Of course, congestion pricing was on the minds of many. Take a listen.
What is your concern for the many small businesses in New York who are going to suffer terribly by this law?
Small businesses.
I come from a small business family. I helped my mother and sister start small businesses. I will continue to be their champion. That's why I fought so hard to reduce it from $15. This was the law of the land when I became governor, and I said $15 was too much for people who have small businesses and live here. I cut it 40%.
So some people, Governor, wanted to know what's going to happen to migrants and asylum seekers in New York as the Trump administration takes over. Listen.
The state is usually one that defends immigrants. How can we help the immigrants and use them to help the state?
The law-abiding immigrants who are here, the migrants who've arrived, we are working very hard to get them work authorization because they came here for a job to support their families. And Marcia, we have 400,000 open jobs in the state of New York. There's something for everyone. Those who do not follow our laws, that's a different story. We need to protect our citizens.
And of course, Governor, taxes and tolls are top of mind. Let's listen.
Any way you can keep the taxes down?
Please, my pockets are getting low. Please, stop these tolls.
These are the people I'm fighting for. That's why those individuals will get either $300 or $500 back in their pockets if they have children, or they can know that their grandchildren will be supported with a tax cut. We're going to make sure that we have a middle-class tax cut, an inflation rebate. So I hear their cries for relief, and that's why I'm delivering a complete affordability package.
So, Governor, outside of work and family, is there anybody that you talk to every day? Or who do you talk to every day besides like your people who you work with, your family? Is there anybody that you go to for advice?
I talk to a lot of people. I talk to David Patterson with some regularity. I just saw him a couple days ago. I call on people who've been in these shoes and understand the challenge. I talk to a lot of Democratic governors. The Democratic women governors are a very tight group. We have a lot of common issues, what it's like to be a woman in a non-traditional field. And so I love my relationships with them as well. But my family's everything to me. My husband is my rock. He's put up with a lot, 40 years of being married to a politician. I've been elected official for 30 years. It's not the easiest job, and my children have been extraordinary. So they're the foundation of, the strength I have.
So here's an off-the-wall question. Do you collect anything?
No.
Have you ever been starstruck?
No.
If you weren't governor, what would you want to do? What would your dream job be if it wasn't governor of the state of New York?
I cannot imagine not being governor of the state of New York right now. This is something I never dreamed was possible. When I was a young person, my dream was to become a staffer for a senator someday.
So I think you far outstripped that dream.
And I did that in my 20s, and so the rest has just been seizing opportunities that are rare. Every opportunity I've had to serve, I've stepped up and done it.
So, Governor, I have a pile of books on my nightstand. I wonder if you read for pleasure and if there's anything you would recommend.
I was actually reading again Hugh Carey, The Man Who Saved New York.
Really?
I look at the challenges of other times as inspiration to me. I spoke about the 1970s in my remarks of what it was like growing up upstate when all the industry left and people left. My family all had to move away years later. And he had to govern during a very challenging time, a financial crisis.
He did.
People were leaving, crime was high. So there's people who've gone before me, whether it's FDR, Teddy Roosevelt. They've all had their challenges, and I draw strength and inspiration from them and understanding that this is an incredible privilege to sit in this position. So
getting sort of personal, what's the best thing about being a grandma?
When that little one comes to visit me, she's 2.5 years old. I FaceTime her every day, watching her grow up. But just the hug she gives me when she shows up, she might be coming in a couple more weeks. She makes you feel it's unconditional love, and there's nothing like it.
So have you ever, or would you ever think about running a triathlon?
No.
Neither would I.
Why would I think about that?
This is from my producer. Have you ever thought of becoming a blonde?
Never entertained that, but I'll tell you this. My entire family was blonde. My mother was blonde, my sister was blonde, my brothers are blonde. I was convinced I was adopted when I was younger. Out of 6 kids, the only one with dark hair. But my father had dark hair, so I realized I was not adopted. Probably.
And you were very close to your dad.
Oh, yeah. I still miss him a lot.
So if you could wave a magic wand, now this is the last question, and you could get one piece of legislation passed, your dream legislation, what would it be?
I want to get through my affordability agenda. I want to make sure that we're taking care of our families, that I can put that $5,000 back in their pockets and let them know they have a governor who understands the challenges of everyday life right now, and I'm going to do something about it.
Governor Hochul, thank you for joining me, and thank you at home for joining us as well.